Welcome to Papillion UnScripted. I'm Michael Severe. It's the place to go to hear from people who truly help make Papillion feel like home. And our guest this week not only makes it feel like home, but the memories feel like home as well. He is the Executive Director of the Sarpy County Museum, Justman, joining us here. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, glad to be here. Thank you.
I know you are a Cubs fan. Does that mean you're from Chicago or around the Chicagoland area?
Right. I am from the city proper,
Okay.
and also the suburbs. But yeah, came out here 12 years ago now.
Yeah. So what was it? The job that brought you out here?
It was. Yeah, I had gone to school for history and had a love of museums and history ever since I could remember, and figured I'd end up in a place like Nebraska, and it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
Yeah. How did you discover the job? Was it just a posting out there? I know you had worked for some museums before, but how did you discover this one in Sarpy County?
Yeah, right. The internet is a powerful tool.
Yeah, World Wide Web.
Exactly. Yeah, and so started looking. Figured I wasn't going to stay in Chicago. Not sure I necessarily wanted to. Mm-hmm. And started applying and looking at museums really across the country. And this one happened to be one that had a really nice connection between public history, the history of communities, and also military history with Offutt, just a stone's throw away from here.
Right. I was thinking that because I know you enjoy military history. When you were looking and when you saw Sarpy County, did you realize how much military history there was here? I don't know Offutt's here, but did you realize how much there was over the course of the last 100 years?
I don't think a lot of people do outside of the area. Mm-hmm. It's one of those best kept secrets for a reason. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once I started digging deeper, I realized just how expansive the historical aspect is from a military angle.
So you get here 12 years ago, you walk into this new facility, this new job, and yeah, I'm sure you had certain goals. What were they? What are some of the things you wanted to get done? And what have you gotten done that you wanted to get done those first couple of years?
The museum, the organization's been around since 1934. Mm-hmm. The museum itself has been around since the 1970s, where we're at today. It's got beautiful 1970s orange carpet.
Yes.
But there's still a lot. It's been the holding place for a lot of history, and there was still a lot to kind of update it into the more 21st century, interacting more with the public. We couldn't just sit around and wait for the phone to ring and somebody to say, hey, I've got an old player piano I want to donate. We had to go out into the community, get involved in different activities, establish an online presence, have regular public programming lineup so that folks either coming down to the museum or we're going out and, I'm doing a talk at the Papillion Senior Center, for example. Just to engage with folks. We're there if people want to reminisce or if they want to learn something.
One of the things I think is really an aggressive and ambitious thing that you guys did was taking all those newspapers, those historic newspapers, and putting them online so it's easier to find stuff. How long is that project taken, and is it still continuing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, digitization is another huge component of and ongoing. The newspapers we've digitized are the Papillion Times, dating back to about 1900. I go back a little earlier than that, up to about the 1970s, and then we've digitized some of the Bellevue papers in Gretna and Springfield as well. They're not online, but they are accessible down at the museum.
Yeah, right.
And we can make copies for folks, and they can browse or they can search. It's unlocked a lot of doors to find information about genealogy and family history, but also businesses, different community events. We recently helped or tried to help Sarpy County locate a time capsule.
Right.
And you can hone in on that pretty easily instead of looking at and dusting off a 100-year-old newspaper and hoping it doesn't crumble in your hands. Yeah. So it's one part preservation, one part accessibility.
You mentioned that time capsule, and I think one of the really good stories, this 100 years, of course, this building turned this year. And, just all the stuff that was around when it went over from being the courthouse to being City Hall, but the old courthouses, that's a really cool story overall, going all the way back to Papillion getting the county seat, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, community history is more than just buildings. It's the people, but the buildings are what people identify with a lot. And so having a building like the old courthouse, Papillion City Hall today, that people can walk through and learn a little bit about as they go through. The historical markers throughout downtown also help with that. It's a great story of how how Papillion gained the courthouse,
Yeah.
going back to 1875, with just across the street from here, what would be the second courthouse, and how that was
Because Bellevue
utilized.
originally had the county seat, right?
Correct. Bellevue originally had the county
Oops,
seat.
we lose it.
There's a history of that.
Yeah, there is too. Yeah.
And so, Bellevue had the county seat from Sarpy County's establishment from 1857 until a young fledgling Papillion, 5 years old, through an election to the public and a little political scheming and wheeling, was able to obtain it. But this is the center of the county, and so they hastily built what was the second courthouse just across the street from here on the other side of the library, and then that lasted more or less till it fell apart until the 1920s when they built this.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you look at Papillion and the history of it. But overall in Sarpy County, how much the railroad mattered. We mentioned the military. There's so many parts to this county there is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sarpy County is, it's often joked, if you open up a map of Nebraska and looked in the center, you wouldn't see this area because that's where the crease lies. That's what folks have told me. But the other aspect of that is we are really interwoven into the fabric of the country. And so between the military, between the pioneer experience, the railroad, this is kind of where it all happened. And with the railroad, the mainline Union Pacific came through this area. I mean, right through this area. This was really the first stop on the other side of the Missouri River, on your way out west. And we all hear about Promontory Point,
yeah.
Utah.
Yeah.
Well, if you kept going from Papillion, you'd eventually get there.
Right.
And so whether it was the railroad, which helped establish Papillion, or some of the other railroads, Burlington or Missouri Pacific, that went through like the nearby town of Portal, which is now part of Papillion. We had a number of railroad lines crisscross Sarpy County.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. There's so much down there at the museum. You guys are kind of busting at the seams. I know you're looking for a new building. How's that process going?
It's going publicly. You might have to edit some.
Well, they
things out.
announced it at the city council. That you're looking. So
it is going well. We've been recently gifted a very large collection of railroad materials, and so between that and the fact that when the museum was built, Sarpy County's population was 80,000 people, and it's projected to be 300,000 by 2050. So, I mean, take a look around. You can see whether it's Tower District, which was just announced recently, or other lots that are just being developed right now, and you're seeing a lot more rooftops and a lot more activity. So that's filling in quickly, and we want to make sure we have a county museum that's size appropriate for Sarpy County.
Well, give us an idea what kind of display that is for the railroad stuff. Like what kind of space would you need to be able to put that out?
Yeah, we'd be looking at, so right now our building is 6,000 square feet, and we'd be looking at probably something significantly larger because the railroad collection is about 5,000 square feet. So, and it's full of original railroad materials, old-fashioned hand carts and pedal carts and all sorts of engineering tools. So yeah, we would need a much more modern, sleek facility to house not just that, but to think about future history for Sarpy County. I mean, people often say, well, you wouldn't want to hear my story, or oh, that's too new to collect. You don't need stuff from the 80s and the 90s.
That's 40 years ago.
Right, but I hate to say it, it is. It's only going to get further and further down the road. We have school kids that come visit, and the joke was, well, they used to be fascinated by a rotary phone, and they still are, but they're just as fascinated by that Motorola Razr from 2000.
Or the brick phone.
Or the brick phone, going back even further. So to make sure we have enough space for telling the next historical chapters of the county.
I like how people, donate stuff or drop stuff off at your front door occasionally. Anything new that's come in recently that you want to highlight?
Boy, yeah. We did receive separate communities, so we represent the 5 communities in Sarpy County, plus Offutt. We received a number of Bellevue High School materials from the 1980s. A woman who was at that time a high schooler, now she's a professional archivist, donated her cheerleading uniform and her old gym uniform, and so that's the sort of stuff we want. And
Right.
I'd love to have something similar from Papillion High School. It's somewhat trivial, but it's also how we lived as a community.
It shows the changes too,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. So we received that. I'm trying to think of other things. Number of photographs we got, family history photographs. We're always looking to widen our genealogy files. It's a good holding place. If there's 3 or 4 kids, they're fighting over family materials, they can just come visit them at the museum, or even have copies down at the museum. Or families say, well, we're not really interested in the tubs of family photographs. We'll take them. So those are the sort of things we've gained recently.
Yeah, I know the new building is a big part of the future, but other things that you in your mind you're thinking that you want to get done over the next few years?
Yeah. Where would I begin?
Yes, right.
As part of that, and is just thinking, with a wider lens, having more exhibits that connect with the community, doing more public outreach. So, for example, the historical markers downtown were fantastic. To make sure that there's more documentation as the community continues to grow. That historical buildings or buildings that might qualify to be on the National Historic Register are recognized. We're not a hindrance to progress. We just want to highlight the past. Doing more oral histories. We've lost a few great folks recently to Sarpy County in the last couple months. Jim Miller from Papillion and Paul Hartnett recently, who was a state senator representing Bellevue, have both passed away, and fortunately both did oral histories. And so to document how people have experienced Papillion over the years is an important thing to have.
I always ask this question of folks because we try to highlight here at Papillion Vision as many things as we can, both in Papillion and kind of the surrounding county as well. Is there something that maybe you don't think gets the attention that it needs to, that you'd like to highlight something, whether it's an event or it's a place or something like that?
The Sarpy County Museum.
That's a good spot, yeah.
But yeah, beyond that.
Well, it's a little hidden, really. I mean, you're heading to the base. Luckily, there's a sign there, and then if you don't turn the right way, you go the wrong way a little bit. Yeah,
you have the security forces tell you to back out. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we are tucked away in Old Town Bellevue. Beyond that, yeah, there's I think any of the historical markers that are throughout the National Register historical markers that are throughout the county. There's a lot of really if you look on a map, there's over 500 now throughout the state of Nebraska.
Wow.
And Omaha has its fair share, and Lincoln does as well. But Sarpy County, has quite a few. And these historical markers, people drive by them all the time. It's not like if you're out in the middle of western Nebraska and you're driving down a road and suddenly you're doing 75 and you pass one in your rearview mirror. They're all over the county. A lot of them are even walkable. And so I'm always a proponent of drawing attention to those.
No, I completely agree with that. It's just right down where we're at the City Hall. If you just walk down the main steps, you've got the history of the courthouses as we were talking about, and I believe the first mayor too.
Right. Yeah. There's that. There's the Mainline Union Pacific historical marker. There's the new Boy Scout cabin historical marker. So they're all over, and it's always nice to see if I'm out walking the dog or something to see people stop and look at those, and that would be my plug. If you're not going to come down to the museum, at least take a look at some of the history around you.
What's something people can do if they want to donate either financially or their time for volunteers? How can they find out more about that?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, we're at heart a small nonprofit. We have myself as a full-time staff member and a couple part-time people to help, and otherwise it's an amazing cadre of volunteers that donate their time, and it's a mixed bag of people. It's older retirees, it's younger college kids, it's people in the middle, whether it's 1 day a week or 1 day a month. And then, in addition to demand power, money it does make the world go round. And so, whether it's a $15 membership or thinking about us at your end of the year annual giving, every little bit does help keep the lights on and keep local history being told.
If you'd have said cash rules everything around me, dollar bill, I would have been very excited. Last thing. drive by this every time I go to the museum. There's the caboose there. What's going on with that? Are you guys still working on that? Is that going to be something that people can go in?
Yeah, I know. It's in addition to the museum, we directly have a log cabin. It's the oldest log cabin in probably the state of Nebraska. It dates back to the 1830s. And then we have the oldest train station in Nebraska, surviving train station from the 1860s. And then we have the train caboose, which we moved several years ago from Springfield. They were looking to part with it, and we said we'd take it, and took it right down 370. And for a couple of years, we had volunteers help restore it. So it's up and running.
Nice.
Yeah. It needed new windows, new floor, new paint, pretty much new everything. But it's a great educational tool.
Yeah, it really stands out. I'm sure the kids see that kind of thing. And
they love
want
it.
to go in and check
Absolutely.
it out. Yeah. Ben, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in and make your way over to the museum to check everything out.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you again, and join us next time when we again talk to someone who makes Papillion feel like home.